This is Meridian Tonight.
Tonight, crisis in the countryside. Farmers say the rural way of life will be lost unless they get urgent help.
My bank manager said to me, if you were mid-50s with no son to follow, he said I would advise you get out of farming because you will have no capital to retire.
Don't think it can't happen to you. Police warn of a pickpocket crime wave.
Was this the low point of the Beatles' career? The night 18 people turned out to watch them play in Aldershot.
And the 9-year-old golfing genius who set a new world record.
Hello, good evening. Farmers in the south say the rural economy is in crisis, and unless they get help soon, jobs will be lost and whole communities will disappear. A report out today says that farm incomes have dropped by 90% over the last 5 years.
It blames high fuel costs, a strong pound and low prices for farm produce. Tonight, farmers say they need help if the rural way of life is to survive. Githa Hutton reports now on the farming crisis.
A picturesque rural setting, but according to farmers, the whole face of the countryside could be changed forever because of the farming crisis.
Various fields will just be left, hedges won't be, certain hedges won't be cut. That is the way that Mr. Blair wants us to go.
A dairy farmer in Elcott near Newbury all his life, he puts in a back-breaking day. Prices for his produce are so low, he's just about staying afloat. It's a similar tale for pig and arable farmer Donald Brown, who's now diversified into cutting hedges to help pay the bills.
My bank manager said to me, if you were mid-50s with no son to follow, he said I would advise you get out of farming because you will have no capital to retire. So rather than lose another, thousands, get out while you can.
22,000 jobs were lost in farming last year. The National Farmers Union reckons that figure could be exceeded this year. They say that basically the government should take action.
They do need help, they need assistance from the government and they need assistance from the multiples to say, fair enough, we do expect you to make a living out of this when you provide the produce to us, so the prices we're offering now aren't sufficient and we'll do something about it. It's within their capacity to do that.
Rural communities are fearful for their future too. Villages like Ramsbury in Wiltshire could be affected.
I think they will be, yes. I think if you look at all the villages locally, there's no butcher shops these days, they're going out. And some places don't have a shop at all.
Locals agree.
All the shops would suffer terribly. It would be absolutely disastrous.
Today's report by accountants Deloitte and Touche reveals farmers are now making less profit than they were 11 years ago, with families having to survive on around £8,000 a year. More farmers may either go to the wall or look for non-farming ventures to make ends meet. Githa Hutton for Meridian Tonight.
The charity which searches for bone marrow donors has put a stop to walk-in clinics where volunteers can be tested. One of the last clinics was held for leukemia patient Natalie Adams from Wokingham. The Anthony Nolan Trust say too many people simply lose interest. Now they'll interview potential donors first. But Natalie's family say they're disappointed at the change in policy, as Kay Oliver reports.
All in a good cause. The head teacher of Embrook School in Wokingham is gunged in slime. Pupils have raised more than £1,000 for the Anthony Nolan Trust, who are working to find a bone marrow donor for Natalie Adams. Natalie, a former pupil, has an aggressive form of leukemia. When the youngsters hit the £1,000 target today, the head teacher knew he was in for a soaking.
I feel a little sticky and a bit wet, and it's getting cold now.
It's a very good cause for one of your former pupils.
Yes, very good cause. Natalie, we're fighting as much as we can to raise as much money as possible for her in her fight against leukemia.
The idea to help Natalie and the Anthony Nolan Trust came from the school's sixth formers.
The local person involved, Natalie, but it was a very unfortunate situation and we really just wanted to help. Obviously it was a big campaign locally and we felt within the Wokingham district we'd like to be able to help.
In August, the school hosted a special clinic where hundreds of volunteers came forward as potential donors giving samples of blood for testing. Each sample costs £50. Now the Anthony Nolan Trust has changed the format of these clinics, concerned they're too emotionally charged, preferring instead to start with an information session.
It really gives people more time to consider the long-term implications and the commitment needed to be a donor. It's not something people should go along, give a blood sample off the cuff, really, without thinking about it, and then regret it later.
I'm personally very disappointed. I feel it was a very good way to do it, and OK, we had 2 people drop out of our 300, but that's a very small proportion.
Natalie is currently in hospital undergoing treatment to remove her own bone marrow as a standby while the search for a donor continues. Kay Oliver for Meridian Tonight.
Work has restarted at the Royal Berkshire Hospital in Reading following a dispute over building contracts. Part of the modernisation programme came to a halt last week. The hospital trusts say that although the contract with the main building firm was terminated, subcontractors are now back at work on the south wing. They're tendering for a new firm to take over the contract.
Controversial plans to close 3 Berkshire schools go before the public again tonight. Wokingham District Council want to build a new primary school at Woodley near Reading. It would mean the closure of Southlake Junior and Infant School and nearby Beechwood Primary School. The meeting tonight will discuss the proposals, which have been prompted by a fall in pupil numbers.
Police are hunting a man who attacked a pensioner in Basingstoke. The woman was followed as she walked along Kenilworth Road. The man pushed her to the ground, but she managed to fight him off. She was treated for cuts and bruises.
A campaign to crack down on pickpockets started today, and the message is, don't think it can't happen to you. Today's national launch is in Reading, and it's aimed at rail commuters and day trippers who travel by tube. Every year, 10,000 people are the victims of pickpockets on the underground, and there's been a 90% increase in the problem over the last year alone. Mary Stanley reports on the crime wave.
Most people think it will never happen to them, but latest figures show a huge rise in pickpocketing, which is why police have launched a new operation targeting commuters and day trippers to London.
Hello, man. Do you know your bag's actually open? No? And if you push your bag round the back, it's really easy for a pickpocket to take it.
Deborah Heath from Reading was robbed on the underground on a day out to London.
While we were on the tube, somebody pretended to be sick, started heaving right next to us. Heaved, and we all moved out of the way very quickly to get away from him because we thought that was it, he was going to be sick over all of us. And lots of jostling, lots of movement, people pressing against you. And during that time, he obviously had an accomplice, and my purse had been taken.
This video footage on the London Underground shows how easy it is to become a target of the pickpockets. The woman in the centre of the picture is about to be robbed. The man in front will block the door of the train, while the man behind steals her bag. It only takes a second.
People are committing them are aged from 7 to 70. But what I will say is that there's a new technique that's being used at the moment with people carrying rucksacks and bags on the shoulders. And that's when we're using a blade, a razor blade or a knife to cut the bag open and take a purse or mobile phone or property from within.
If the ladies are carrying a bag, it's better than to carry it across the body with the flap toward the body. It's harder for someone to gain access. And gentlemen really shouldn't carry the wallets in the back pocket. It should always really be on the inside pocket of the jeans or the trousers or inside a jacket.
There were 10,000 robberies on the tube last year, a rise of 90%. Police say it's down to an increase in passenger numbers and an influx of gangs from Eastern Europe. Many victims are from outside the capital. Police officers are setting up advice centres at stations across the region to make people aware of the risk. Mary Stanley for Meridian Tonight.
Meanwhile, £6 million is being spent improving security at railway stations in the south. 50 cameras have been installed at Reading Station, which will be monitored from a central control room 24 hours a day. The improvements have been jointly funded by Thames Trains and Great Western to reassure passengers that safety is being taken seriously.
The government's new rail authority have announced that services on the line from Waterloo to Salisbury and Exeter will be part of a new operating franchise. The route is currently operated by South West Trains. The authority hope that the number of services will double as a result of the move. Several companies are expected to bid to take over the running of the line.
Hundreds of homes in towns and villages throughout the south are under several feet of water tonight. It's a busy time for weather experts at the Met Office in Bracknell, and forecasters say more rain could be on the way. By contrast, much of Hampshire and the Thames Valley have escaped the downpours. Instead, the region has enjoyed brilliant sunshine today. Tiffany Foster has been to find out what the weather experts predict.
The emergency services in East Sussex have been fully stretched by the torrential overnight rain that's caused rivers like the Uck to burst their banks. Schools had to be closed as mudslides swept into classrooms and nearby homes in Brighton. At Bracknell's Met Office, the rainstorms were being tracked throughout the night. While Berkshire, Surrey and Hampshire got their share of the rain, the south coast got the worst.
Yesterday afternoon, a band of very heavy, thundery showers across southern parts of England from the west to the east, and then became slow moving overnight over Sussex up into Kent. And in fact, it stayed there virtually without moving for about 12 hours last night.
Only last month, the Environment Agency redesigned its flood warning symbols to bring them in line with the Met Office style and make them easier to understand. And although some parts of the region escaped major flooding, the wet ground means places like the Thames Valley should still watch the weather.
You probably have to go back 10 or 20 years to see similar sort of events. This is really quite an extreme event.
Extremes of weather do seem to be becoming more commonplace these days in our normally temperate climate, which is all the more surprising for people who get caught out when you consider the warnings that are given by the Met Office and the Environment Agency. So that means on a sunny day like today in Newbury, when you might feel like one of these, it always pays to be prepared. Ensure you've got one of these. Tiffany Foster in Newbury for Meridian Tonight.
Yes, ice cream and umbrella weather. There's a Meridian Tonight special about the floods in the south this evening at 7:30. And there are further details on our website. That's meridiantv.com.
Well, we're going to take a short break now. In a moment, Carl's weather forecast and the latest travel update from Susanna Streeter. And also the secret haven for wildlife that's sandwiched between two of Berkshire's busiest towns.
And a world record for the Hampshire golfer who's just 9 years old.
Well, I just like hurting the ball and just whacking it really hard.
Find out more about her after the break. Welcome back. Still to come, the sport with Cary, the weather details with Carl Tyler, and Susanna has the travel for us.
But first, if you've just arrived home, here once again are tonight's main headlines. Farmers in the south have appealed for urgent help to stay in business. They've warned that the rural way of life could disappear forever if action isn't taken.
And a national campaign has been launched at Reading Station to highlight the problem of pickpocketing after a 90% rise in the problem. Now, you'd think you were miles from anywhere in a landscape of water, lush grasses and rare birds. But this haven for wildlife is tucked between two of Berkshire's busiest towns.
The historic reed beds between Newbury and Thatcham were under threat, and it's taken 2 years to restore them. And now they're an important home for rare species. Malcolm Stewart has been finding out more for tonight's Meridian Country.
London to Penzance main line ensures that the Thatcham reed beds are not the quietest site of special scientific interest, but in 5 years of careful management they've been restored into a unique nature reserve. These 100 acres between Thatcham and Newbury are now the largest area of inland reed beds in southern England.
Reed beds are one of the nationally most threatened habitats in the UK, and they support a range of also very, very rare and threatened species.
That's why English Nature took Newbury's MP David Rendell on a nature trail through the reeds and waterways to this bird hide. On the lakes there are familiar ducks, rarer breeds like this grebe, and, surprisingly for mid-October, swallows that should be by now sunning themselves in Africa. Until 1995, much of this area was scrubby grazing land. The MP is impressed by the progress.
It's a success story of a partnership between English Nature and the local authority. We've got here a very special sort of reed bed, one of the largest in the whole of southern England, and that shows, I think, what can be done when everybody gets together and works for the benefit of the environment.
Reed beds used to stretch nearly all the way from Newbury to Reading and provided the traditional roofing material for most cottages. Perhaps that's how Thatcham got its name. But exploitation of gravel pits turned the area into a pitted landscape. Nature needed a helping hand.
The reeds had been unmanaged for many years and the area was drying out and turning to scrub. Now what we've done is we've restored areas of open water and we've managed the water levels so that we're getting a larger area of good reed bed habitat being restored, which is exactly what the birds need.
And once again, the reed beds are a haven for rare but rather elusive wildlife and a unique area of wilderness on the doorstep of two busy towns. Malcolm Stewart in Thatcham for Meridian Tonight.
Very nice indeed. Now another site of special scientific interest is Cary.
I'm not sure about that. Well, football and some good news for Reading fans. The club's chairman, John Medeski, has given manager Alan Pardew and his assistant, Martin Allen, new 3-year contracts. It's their reward for steering the club into a promotion playoff position. This report from Jeremy Pearce.
It was back in January that Alan Pardew brought in Martin Allen to replace Southampton-bound John Gorman. The side were then struggling 3 places off the foot of Division 2. But the new partnership beat off relegation and they're now looking upwards towards promotion. Chairman John Medeski believes he has a winning team.
We've just signed a 3-year contract with both managers, which bodes well because it means that everybody connected with the club realises that we've got a stable management team, a stable team of players in depth, and what we're putting out on the park is absolutely excellent.
Martin Allen was out of football working as a gardener when he got the Reading call. His extrovert style has already made him a cult hero among the fans. His pre-season training session proved a big hit and he's never slow to voice his opinions on the touchline. Reports linking him to the vacant manager's job at Oxford may just have accelerated the contract talks.
It's a bit of security for both of us, but also security hopefully for the football club and see us develop as a group of players and as a staff to get ourselves up into the First Division and to kick on from there.
And the chairman was full of praise for Alan Pardew, particularly his transfer dealings. A dozen players signed for less than £2 million, including Martin Butler and Jamie Curitan, who've already scored almost 20 goals between them this season.
We know we can take this team forward and you know, the players can now realise their futures hopefully in safe hands.
Jeremy Pearce at the Medeski Stadium for Meridian Tonight.
Now, any golfer will tell you that a hole-in-one is rather difficult to achieve. But a 9-year-old from Hampshire has done just that, and in doing so has set a new